computerized telephones, and especially satellites. Satellites make distance unimportant. Far more than the mass societies of the past, our diverse new civilization requires data to define our differences and glue us back together. All of these technologies are coming together, connecting every human being with every other. We are creating a new nervous system for the planet. Keeping pace with communication is the computer, which stores and manipulates information. The computer provides an additional memory system for the human race to plug into the emerging neural network. Second wave computers were big, costly, and run by experts. Some still are. By contrast, today's third wave computers are small, cheap, and decentralized. They put power into the hands of ordinary people, even children. The computer has such powerful effects on society. Its development has been compared to the invention of writing. We are enhancing the intelligence of the human race. These children are entering a new culture. Computers are converging with communications. It's increasingly hard to tell where one leaves off and the other begins. Beyond this sudden convergence lie still other technologies for storing and retrieving information, for enhancing memory, and even perception. Video disc and computers help us model reality in fresh ways.
Two examples of Beethoven's music follow. The segment from the Fifth Symphony begins with what are undoubtedly the most famous four notes in music.
New encyclopedias on video disc. Even new kinds of maps. Not a guide, but an experience.
Aspen City Hall.
Point to a spot in Aspen, Colorado, for example, and you're there. Street by street, house by house.
Thank you for visiting Aspen.
We used to think of the office as a paper factory, but now a third-wave office is taking shape. Word processors are fast replacing typewriters. Optical scanners replace our eyes. They read documents for us and feed them directly into computer memories. Electronic mail systems, new forms of printing, all are revolutionizing the traditional office. Linked to telecommunications equipment, from cables to satellites, they become part of a worldwide information net. Such changes blur the roles of secretaries and executives. They threaten some workers with unemployment, even as others find their jobs upgraded. The former secretary may lose her job. Then again, she may become an executive. In fact, all our old notions about business and money itself are now being challenged, turned upside down. We used to think of money as paper or currency. Today, we are creating electronic money. Banks transfer billions across the globe daily, merely by sending electronic pulses. Take the SWIFT system, for example.
Now more and more we are able to exchange information through electronic means.
Jean-Claude Monnier is a senior official of the National Bank of Paris.
SWIFT is an international network which links 1,000 banks in the world within 32 countries. It's a network which allows these banks to exchange information related to foreign payments, customer transfers, bank transfers. All the currency movements in the world will be passed in the future through SWIFT. The further step will be for individuals to make inquiries on their account positions from home, on the TV sets.
Third wave technology affects our lives from head to foot, from education to shopping, from banking to fashion. At the Portopia Exposition in Kobe, Japan, we see how the individual consumers of tomorrow may design their own clothing. Today, we buy mass-manufactured clothing designed by others. Tomorrow, we may feed our personal dimensions and tastes through a camera to operate computerized machines that cut clothes to our own designs. Diversity in place of uniformity. We see a return to custom tailoring, but now on a high technology basis. Today, a photograph. In the near future, the technology may provide the dress itself. Past and future converge once more. Dramatic as they are, however, all these third wave advances in space, in communications, in perception, and memory, all seem small compared with what is simultaneously taking place in an entirely different field, genetics. By splicing together genes from different organisms, scientists are searching for cures for cancer, genetic defects, and other diseases. Their work also promises to radically improve the world food supply. Here at the International Plant Research Institute, scientists are using advanced cell fusion and recombinant DNA techniques to create plants with astonishing new characteristics. Plants that thrive in desert sand and can be irrigated with seawater. Cereals that withstand heat and frost. Potatoes, barley, rice, corn, and cassava with remarkable nutritional properties. Third wave technologies, from genetic engineering to satellites, from computers and microchips to ecosystem farming. Vegetables and fish, for example, in an energy exchange. Ocean sciences, all these are interrelated, and they're different from the heavy mechanical tools of the second wave era. They are an elegant new evolutionary species. They add up to a radically changed technological base for the third wave civilization now taking shape around the globe. The third wave holds out hope for millions who have never even felt the second wave of change. In the past, many believed that all first wave countries needed centralized industrial technologies to feed their people. Others insisted that only small-scale, cheap technologies were appropriate for poor countries. Today, the third wave opens fresh possibilities, new combinations of past and future. In Las Gaviotas, Colombia, an entire range of new farming and energy devices are used. Simple but sophisticated machines designed with the aid of computers. Backyard robots, photovoltaic cells, cheap computers, genetically assisted farming. All these third wave tools may soon provide new means for decentralized development. There is no simple technological fix for poverty. But the third wave compels us to re-examine all our ideas. Many of us assume technology means pollution, and the industrial age did bring pollution, heavy use of energy, more and more damage to the environment and to people. By contrast, many third-wave technologies use less energy and create less damage. A striking example is the Shinai Toku Maru, one of the most remarkable ships in the world. It combines the ancient technology of the sail with the advanced technologies of today. Sensing devices measure the wind. A computer calculates its force and direction. The sails are adjusted to take maximum advantage of wind power in order to supplement the conventional engines. In energy, just as in other fields, the third wave opens many new options. The Shinai Toku Maru burns half, often less than half, the energy required by comparable conventional vessels. But this is only one example of the new diversity of energy forms becoming available to us today. The sun. Around the world, people are finding new, practical ways to use solar energy. These men and women seem to be engaged in traditional agriculture. Yet on these 10 acres outside New Delhi in India, they produce far more impressive food yields than traditional agriculture allows. This is in fact a solar farm created by an electronics engineer and businessman named Jagdish Kapoor. Solar collectors provide nearly all the energy for light, heat, and cooking. A computer links them to a biogas system. Yesterday and tomorrow combined once more. Elsewhere, solar furnaces melt metals and generate electric power. Photovoltaic cells turn sunlight directly into electricity. Wave power, geothermal, energy from the heat of the earth itself. Wind generators, small decentralized energy systems, all of these are coming into use. Someday, fusion power, as limitless as the sun or the stars themselves. Sun, sea, wind will eventually provide the diversity of energy forms needed for the new civilization. Technologies are not without hazard. For example, some fear genetic engineering may be used for sinister political or even military purposes. There are also new forms of pollution, like electronic smog. Equally real is the danger that computers, the new two-way communication systems, and other technologies will be used to undermine our personal liberties.
Your identity has been verified. Please dial your condition code. Thank you.
Governments themselves frequently misuse computers, invading our privacy to control our behavior. There are men in every government, in every society, who would be perfectly happy to turn George Orwell's 1984 into a reality. At least as important as technological hazards or the threat to our liberties is the specter of unemployment. For 5 years, I was a blue-collar worker in steel foundries, automobile plants, and other factories in the American Midwest. I was a millwright and a metal finisher, an assembly line worker and a welder. This foundry, with its unforgettable smell of hot sand, the hiss of air, the rattle of chains, the black grit, calls to mind the faces of the men and women I worked with then. Factories that endured and prospered for generations are now no more than relics of the past. In nation after nation, vast upheavals. Millions without work, without hope. And not only workers, managers too. In the high technology countries, what is passing away are not merely old industries, but a way of life. The blue-collar, white-collar mass society of the second wave era. At the time of the Industrial Revolution, when the second wave arrived, workers tried to protect themselves by destroying the new machines. In this pub, outside Halifax, England, linger the ghosts of those desperate and hungry men. It was here in 1811 that Ned Ludd, leader of the so-called Luddites, conspired with his men to destroy the new technologies they blamed for unemployment. Ludd and his men smashed the textile spinning frames. They tried to hold back the second wave. But in the end, it was they themselves who were smashed. And virtually all that remains of them is the solitude in this tiny tavern. Yet the questions raised by the Luddites have come to haunt us again. Can we continue forever to provide regular full-time work for all? If whole industries die, who should suffer the costs of dislocation? Workers? Managers? Government? Are we creating a permanent class of left-out people, trapped in the past, excluded from the future? But even as we wonder what to do about the dying second-wave industries, a whole new breed of third-wave industries are cropping up. For some industries, too many workers. For others, not enough. How do we turn crisis into opportunity? Not for the few, but for the many. Unfortunately, no government today has an adequate answer to this question. And yet, nothing could be more dangerous or foolish than despair. For even as a second-wave civilization disintegrates around us, we're creating a new civilization, a new way of life, filled not just with problems, but also with fantastic opportunities for ourselves and our children. The time has come to prepare ourselves for that new way of life. The great cathedral at Chartres. Whatever else the church may have been, it was a product of human imagination. And just as our ancestors created machines, they also created institutions and buildings to symbolize them. In fact, all the institutions we take for granted today, churches, factories, schools, governments, were all inventions, invented by human beings just like you and me. Successive age creates new institutions, unimaginable to the people of the past. However much we value old institutions, we cannot expect them to solve all our problems. What the world now needs desperately are new ways of working and living together, institutions for a third wave civilization. Civilization, we're told, began in ancient Mesopotamia in a region called the Fertile Crescent. Here, 30 or 40 miles south of San Francisco, lies Silicon Valley, California. And some of its inhabitants think that it may well be the Fertile Crescent of tomorrow's civilization. Here, computer firms, chip manufacturers, software designers jostle each other next door to genetic engineering laboratories and agricultural research centers. These are the new, the third wave industries. And in them, the future of work is unfolding. These men are working. They're employees of the Rome Corporation, and they're typical of the emerging third wave labor force.
Really low-cost basic instrument.
They spend their hours thinking, counting, reading, talking, applying imagination to problems. There is more and more design work, and there's less and less assembly work. What there is requires skill. Jim Trybig is president of Tandem Computers, many of whose employees feel they're on a frontier where success depends on creativity.
To be creative, 9 ideas out of 10 are going to be wrong. So it must be a structure of people, a group of people that likes different ideas, realizes that 9 out of 10 are going to be wrong, and doesn't punish the person for that.
Recently, I spent the morning with the chairman of the board of another Silicon Valley company, rather like this one. This company's done extremely well in recent years. It's shot up and now has annual sales of about $400 million a year. This time, I wore a shirt and tie. He wore a t-shirt. I was in a business suit. He was wearing jeans. I wore dress shoes, and he was barefoot. He was hardly 30 years old. And he said to me that to hire a top-notch engineer nowadays in Silicon Valley takes a lot more than just money.
There are a lot of electronics companies you could work for. But only one.
Competition is so fierce that third-wave companies are turning to television to help them find the right person.
It's not the easiest place to work. Just the best.
Companies are inviting people to join the future
and catch the wave.
Purpose, challenge, a stimulating environment. This place looks like a health spa. It is, in fact, part of the facilities of a telecommunications company. The old ethic assumed that work had to be painful. The new ethic reverses that. Many of these companies think playing hard actually contributes to thinking hard. The institution of work itself is changing. Second wave companies think of machines and buildings as assets. They think of people as expenses. Third wave companies think of machines and buildings as expenses. People are their most important asset. Creative people are the biggest asset of all. That's the secret of the new civilization. Home. The word calls up images of the past. A man's home is his castle. Home, sweet home. The culture is filled with songs and sayings that glorify the home as the individual's ultimate haven in a world of hunger and haste. Nowhere was this attitude more pronounced than in the homes of the Victorian age. And yet, at the very time that the culture was most glorifying the home, the second wave was tearing it apart. It took work out of the home and put it into the factory, the office. Today, work is coming home again. Paul Lutis likes privacy. He likes the outdoors. But he also values contact with the world. Outside his cottage in the Oregon mountains is a satellite receiver dish. Inside, he writes and sells computer programs. For him, home is an electronic cottage.
This cabin is a brain factory in the wilderness. It's where I think, and thinking is my product.
Paul Lutis is not alone. Meet Emily Klipstein and her family. Emily designs educational materials.
I really do enjoy working at home because I do get a lot done. My productivity really goes up, and I don't have to drive that commute.
Yasuo Nagazumi works for both the automobile industry and the fashion industry in Japan. Because of cheap computers and telecommunications, people are designing buildings and cars, typing memos and letters, writing reports, all at home. Whole families may work together again. Nothing will ever replace person-to-person contact. But we may go to the office 2 days and stay home 3. Many patterns are possible. All second-wave economies are in trouble. Yet nothing is more wasteful than making people commute to jobs that deny their creativity. We are building new institutions for a third-wave civilization. But will all of us benefit? The third wave imposes fundamental changes on the economy in many nations simultaneously. It raises the risk of social upheaval. It poses heated controversies over the marketplace, planning, and personal freedom. Yet one thing is clear. Millions of us will need new skills on the job and in the home, retraining for an entirely new way of life. Yet, for most workers, appropriate training opportunities are still scarce or simply unavailable. Here in South Carolina, the state government has made a
What I'd
start,
like to do is talk a little bit about Program 5. in terms
preparing
of
people
problems that I've
for the
noticed
industries of the future.
I went to Piedmont Tech and took a 2-year course in data processing.
Frances Fitzpatrick used to be a religious educator. Today, she's a systems analyst for Westinghouse Corporation.
People often say that you can't teach old dogs new tricks, but then I tell them I'm not a dog and I can learn.
I'll talk to Walt and see what's going on as far as his...
For Scott Wellington at Tandem Computers in California, the third wave has brought surprising changes.
I worked part-time all my life, really. I was a dishwasher for a while. I worked as a janitor. The last job I had before I came out here was in a Mercedes-Benz dealer, jockeying cars up and down the East Coast. If I had thought that I'd be doing what I'm doing now 3 years ago, I would have laughed because it just didn't enter into my mind. I didn't think there was that many avenues up to a somewhat technical job that I'm doing now.
Kyushu, Japan. Once jobless or employed in other industries, these people are part of a unique government training program that prepares them for tomorrow. There are more opportunities in the new fields than many of us suspect, but they require retraining, and the need for that is global. We are all handicapped if all we have are yesterday's skills. If adults need to learn new life skills, what about our children? Second wave schools did a good job of preparing kids for a life in factories and offices. Here, for example, we see children learning how to commute. In classrooms, they become accustomed to rote and repetitive work. But are these the skills they will need in a third wave world? Rather than going back to basics, we need to go forward to new basics. We need to change all our educational assumptions, even the role of the school itself. Tomorrow, for many, the third wave may put education back into the home, right along with work. The computer can help, whether in the kitchen or the classroom. With the computer, each student can learn at his or her own pace. Instead of second wave uniformity, we see the ultimate in diversity, individualization. We need to reinvent all of education, even the idea of literacy. How literate is a child who cannot recognize distortions or propaganda on television or in the other media? How literate is a child who knows nothing about computers? In fact, some people today are already beginning to speak of tri-literacy. Print literacy, media literacy, and computer literacy. The third wave will need workers, and not just a small elite. And they will have to be adaptive, questioning, creative. Some people would like the schools to go backward. They would like schools like the ones they attended 20 or 40 years ago. Yet the world is changing swiftly, and we may very well cheat our children if we continue to educate them for yesterday's second wave civilization instead of the third wave civilization of tomorrow. Crises. Our days are filled with them.
Inflation
And politics not just work and education, will have to be reinvented if we are to survive. If governments don't cope with the third wave, they will face increasingly violent protests, unemployment, inflation, terrorism, and the dangers of war. What do we do? A lot of people would like some messiah to come along and solve all our problems for us. But other people, in other crises, have turned to great leaders to do their thinking for them. And the result, often as not, has been disaster, tyranny, or Holocaust. If our political institutions aren't working, it may not be because of our leaders. Even if we had saints and geniuses on top, the system couldn't work. Because the problem isn't people. The problem is the system itself. Second wave governments cannot govern an increasingly third wave world. But that's exactly what we do in politics. We still make laws the way our grandfathers did. Today's governments, capitalist and communist alike, were never designed to operate in a world of computers and satellites and high-speed, world-shaking change. In fact, our governments are obsolete. Our political institutions are overloaded. They're blowing their fuses. And unless we begin to apply as much imagination to politics as we do to technology, communications, and many other fields, the collision between second wave and third wave is likely to become even more intense and potentially dangerous. Fortunately, new political tools are on the horizon. Computers, interactive television, electronic voting. But the essential problems are not technological, and electronics alone cannot solve our problems. What are needed are new ideas. The coming of the third wave forces us to question all of our deepest assumptions about democracy. What is the meaning of majority rule in a demassified society made up of so many diverse groups? What new methods can we use to mediate conflicts and prevent violence? Are all our constitutions out of date? And in an age of computers and electronics and genetic engineering, don't we need to expand our conception of human rights? Is parliamentary democracy itself, the whole idea of electing others to represent us, still viable? Or do we need direct democracy as well? No one can be sure what kind of government will work best for us under the new conditions of the third wave. But some truths are evident. The third wave civilization is made up of minorities. In fact, in this new society, all of us are members of minority groups. We need to protect the rights of minorities, to increase, not decrease, their voice in government. We need to put more decisions down at the local level, the grassroots. But the third wave is also global. We may need new global institutions to deal with energy, ecology, resources, communications, outer space. We are already on the moon. Our spacecraft circle the planets. Yet our political parties are still fighting to preserve the mass society, the second wave civilization of yesterday. If we look back, we find that our ancestors invented all the political apparatus we still use today. Bureaucracies, parties, parliaments, presidencies, prime ministerships. They created the entire system, but for a distant age. We are light years from our origins, and now the time has come again, a revolutionary moment in human history, when we will have to be as creative as our ancestors were. As the new civilization arrives, we will have to use imagination to invent new political forms for tomorrow. An expanded democracy fit for the 21st century. The surprising message of the third wave is that as the affluent nations move into this new age, they become more like first wave nations, but on a high technology basis. And the first wave nations may be able to feed their millions without undergoing the agony of a traditional industrial revolution. It may be possible to combine the computer and the hoe, the satellite and the soil, the microchip and the mind. The third wave brings the end of mass society and a rich new human diversity. And despite difficulties of transition, it holds out promise, not merely for the strong and the rich, but for the vast majority of the human race from one end of the earth to the other. We are all together now at the starting point. We are the children of the third wave of history.
What obstacles and opportunities does the third wave present for Canada? What challenges does it offer? And what should we be doing about them? I'm David Suzuki. In a few moments, join me and our Canadian panelists for a discussion of Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave.
Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave, exciting theories and possibilities, and as he points out, some serious transitional problems. This wave of change is happening very rapidly in historical terms, but it's by no means an overnight revolution. We already know that there's often a gap of years between the development of new technology and its widespread use. That gap happens because it takes time for the marketplace to invent practical ways to apply a new device or system. Time for people to get used to it, and time for the economic factors, the costs and benefits, to come into balance. As a society, as Canadians, we need that time to make sure that the reality of change lives up to the promise. Now, to take a closer look at both the problems and the potential for Canada, Dr. David Suzuki.
Good evening. I'd like you to meet our distinguished panel. Ian Sharp is helping to lead us into the third wave as the president of a software company. Marie-Josée Drouin is executive director of internationally renowned think tank, the Hudson Institute. And John Evans is a medical doctor, an academic, and president of a biotechnology company. What we've just seen is a provocative, personal statement about the synthesis of history and where we are at the present time. And in our short period, I'd like to discuss some of our reactions to points that particularly struck us. I'll ask each of you in turn. And as the chairperson, I'll take the prerogative and say that one of the things that surprised me was his suggestion that perhaps first wave countries might leapfrog the second wave and go right into the third wave. And I've always regarded Canada as really a first wave country in the sense that we rely very heavily on our natural resources and import much of our industry and technology. What does it mean for us to escape the second wave and go straight into the third wave? Is it possible? I don't know. Mr. Sharp.
There's no doubt in my mind that the impact of technology will be quite severe. Technology is advancing at a very high rate, and this will undoubtedly have an impact on jobs, particularly in the manufacturing sector. What this means, of course, is that machines will be making machines. Men will not be doing that. Various classes of work will either disappear or reduce in importance. And this does call into question, as Toffler points out, the value of the education system. Is it training people in the right direction? Is it providing the level of education which is going to be required in terms of flexibility in the future?
Ms. Duroy?
Well, I think that the program raises some important choices for Canada, and in that sense it presented a somewhat partial picture of technology by its emphasis on the information society. And we're going to have to make much tougher choices in the sense that we expect technology to have tremendous impact on new materials which might compete with our natural resources and our smokestack industries. We expect technology to make tremendous strides in the area of energy, much more than what was described in the program. Technology will have tremendous impact on all new forms of services, financial services, personal services, on environmental services, for example, on medical services. I was surprised, for example, that some of the social issues relating to the aging of the population were not raised, because they do portend serious policy questions. And so in that sense, I found it was somewhat partial, but we may have to specialize more in the future rather than diversify, as he suggested, because we are a small country and we can't do a little bit of everything. And I think we have to pick and choose, and a more wide-ranging discussion of these options would have been interesting.
Dr. Evans.
Well, the very title, the third wave, sort of implies a sweeping generalization, and it is that. There's an obsession with what technology can do in every aspect of life, and it may be slightly exaggerated, but what I find really most important in what Toffler has to say is the importance of investing in the individual, in the human mind, in ideas. And it's something that perhaps we haven't done as well in this country as they have in some of the other countries that are now leading in the new technologies. It involves a lot of risk-taking. It involves the chance of failure. It involves investing in people, in their ideas, their creative potential, rather than thinking only in terms of a product. And so I think that aspect of what Toffler has to say is extraordinarily important now in thinking about policies and patterns of development for the future. Where perhaps I lose Toffler a little bit is in his rejection of all institutions, starting with marriage, the family, the school, the university, the government, the community. I think we're essentially social beings, and we will interact, we will form different types of institutions, but one can't help but believing that those institutions will be transformed by these new technologies, and let's hope they're transformed in such a way that really does stimulate the creativity of individuals in education and in the workplace and even in government.
Well, I think you've raised a very important point about the need to invest in people and ideas. And Canada's occupied a very peculiar position in that we've been next to the United States. We've seen our best people, our best ideas be sucked into this giant country down south, and there's almost a spiritual lack of self-confidence, a lack of a belief that we can really compete, you know, an attitude that if you're so good, what are you still doing in Canada? And as a parent, I've always worried about this, that we we raise children who don't really have any models of people in their own country who have been world class, so that they can say, of course, Canadians are contributing in science, technology, or in the arts. Why not? We're an advanced country like any others. And I think there is that need, but how do you go about doing it? Can we?
I think you have to have much greater synergy between the educational establishments and industry. We do not in Canada have a university such as Stanford or MIT which provides the kind of environment which fosters the development of industry outside of it, and the industry itself spawns further industry and further research. Venture capital tends to follow that kind of development. There is no shortage of venture capital for the right ideas. We merely have to, I think, provide an environment that people can move to from universities.
Dr. Evans, you're in one of those hot areas. Do you think that that kind of relationship can be established?
It would require a change in attitudes on the part of government, of academic institutions, and of industry. But most important, it would require a confidence of individuals that it can be done here. The individuals who really are going to have to lead that wave of ideas, as well as the ones who are going to support them. And as you point out, that confidence hasn't been easily manifested in the past, and so that would require a convulsion in our thinking.
A quick question. We rely very heavily in Canada on our natural resources. Do the third wave technologies have anything to help us with there?
Well, I think they can help us in terms of extracting and perhaps transporting natural resources, but we may also have to think of these new materials that will compete with those natural resources. And I think perhaps in developing this risk-taking culture, we'll have to learn not to rely so much on something that has always gotten us out of trouble in the past. And I think it's been a safety net, and it's a safety net that may not be as effective in the past. And that may be what causes us to rise to the occasion.
By safety net, you mean we've had it too good?
Well, we've had it easy.
But you know, it may be that if we are at that early stage of a less advanced technology, that the new technologies may help us with the natural resources and so on to remain competitive in a new period. It may be very important to our future.
Well, if Mr. Toffler has done anything, it has been to stimulate us, and we've barely skimmed off the questions that are available. I hope you continue to think about it and debate it.
As I think the comments of the panelists demonstrated, we need something more than just new technologies. We need a fair amount of public and private planning and debate, careful thinking and discussion, not just to make the technology work, but to make it work for people. That's our goal at the Royal Bank. We think it's one we share with all Canadians. Presenting this program is part of our contribution to achieving it, the full and rich potential of Canada's present and Canada's future. Thank you for joining us.